receiving students and 7s. Thank you, take your seat. Receiving students and 7s as usual. Before we go into our today's lesson, let's recap what we have learned in our previous lesson. So our recapping lesson, I have given you an activity. Our previous lesson was on adding decimals. Now, as our recapping lesson, I would like us to calculate or add the decimal numbers which are given on the screen as our recapping activity. You can do this in pairs or in threes or as a group. Operation sign. Don't forget the operation sign. Good. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Teresa. Okay, receiving students and 7s, I think we have completed that recapping activity. It's not that too difficult. Okay, we will have Teresa to come and show her working out on the board. Teresa. You are this. I would like you to compare your work or your answer with Teresa's answer. Okay, thank you, Teresa. Let's see our Teresa's answer here. Now, I would like you to compare, students, I would like you to compare your work with Teresa's work. And try to see, compare the working out plus the answer that she has given us. Okay? Is there anything that she missed out? Receiving students and 7s. Did she follow step 1 up to step 4? I think yes, she did. She have first step, she arranged the numbers in column and then lined up the decimals in in straight line or correctly in a straight line, and then fill in spaces where necessary with zeros. So she has done that. Okay, and that added as usual. Added the whole numbers, ignoring the decimal point. And is the final answer correct? Okay, the final answer is 33.506. So receiving students and 7s, you should have this answer. This is the correct answer. Thank you, Teresa. Let's give 2 big claps to Teresa. Now, receiving students and 7s, our lesson topic for today is on subtraction of decimals. Now receiving students and 70s. Before we go into our main lesson activity or learning activities, I would like to remind you that the steps in subtracting decimals are not different to the steps that we applied in adding decimals. It's just only one step which is in subtraction of decimal is different. In addition of decimal, we added decimals. In this lesson, we will subtract the decimals. So that is the only difference that you can see between the two lessons that we have, the two lessons that we are going to have. In our previous lesson, we looked at addition of decimals, and now we are going to look at subtraction of decimals. Now, I have a learning activity that I would like us to do as a practical exercise to understand how we can calculate decimal numbers, or how we can subtract decimal numbers. Receiving students and 70s, we have the activity which is on the screen. Try to subtract 34.65 and 7.896. Later we will go through the steps on how to subtract decimal numbers. For the meantime, I would like you to subtract those two numbers using what you have learned in your previous grade. So receiving students and 70s, please go ahead with your first learning activity. If you are finding how to add or subtract the decimal numbers, there's a hint there. The hint is arrange the decimals in column space with the decimal points lined up correctly. Okay, students, I think looks like everybody finished with the learning activities. So I'll have Joshua to come and show his working out on the board. Okay, receiving students and 70s, please. Joshua is going to do show his working out and the answers on the board. While he's doing that, I would like you to compare your answers with Joshua's answer. Okay? Okay, let's have Rhoda. Okay, we will go through the steps and then try to come up with a final answer. Okay? Now, let us go through the steps. When we are subtracting decimals, step number 1, arrange the decimal numbers in column with larger number on top and decimal points lined up correctly. So that is step number 1. Did these two students did that? Did they line up the decimal numbers in column? Yes. That's our step number 1. We are going step by step. Step number 1, did they do that? Yes. And did they line up the decimal numbers in a straight line? Okay, yes, they did that. We haven't come to our final answer yet, receiving students and 7 is. We are now going through the steps. And finally, we will try to confirm that answer as a correct answer, or one of them as a correct answer. Okay, 2 students have done that. After changing, if the decimal numbers are written across, we have to arrange them in column. Step number 2, after arranging them in decimal numbers, we fill in the spaces with zeros. Okay? Like in that case, 0 will be filled in after decimal number, which is after 5 here. And these 2 students have done that by filling in zeros. After that, our next step is to subtract as if the values are whole numbers. So, in here, in this stage, when you are subtracting, we are not considering the decimal points. We ignore the decimal points for a while and then do the normal subtracting of whole numbers, receiving students and 7 is. Is that clear? Forget about the decimal point for a while and then do normal subtraction of whole numbers or like whole numbers. After that, we then consider the decimal point, and that is going to be our step number 4. So our step number 4, the decimal point will be between what 2 numbers? Okay, our decimal point will be between 6 and 7, or will be placed between 6 and 7, which will come in line with other decimal points from the above numbers that we are, above 2 numbers that we are subtracting. Okay? So, let's confirm the answer here. Whose answer is correct? Okay, Joshua's answer is correct. This is the correct answer. We have a mistake here. The mistake here is from this 5 here. Rhoda did not carry 1 to make this 0 as 10. Rhoda? Okay, so 10 subtract 6 will be 4. So Rhoda forgot the borrowing step. Okay, she forgot the borrowing step. So remember, this 0 is a number which is trying to subtract this number here, which is 6. So when we have such cases like that, we must remember the borrowing method in our subtraction operation. When we are doing subtraction, we have our borrowing method. So remember that, whether in normal subtraction or in decimals as well, when we are subtracting decimals. So receiving students and 7 is. We will now go into our exercise. Before we go into our exercise, likewise, I would like to repeat myself here with the steps. The 4 steps which I have given you. The only difference between addition and subtraction is in step 3. Okay? Step 3, we are subtracting in here. In addition, we were doing adding. But the rest steps, step 1, step 2, and step 4 are the same as in our addition lesson, step 1, 2, and 3. The only difference is step 3. So here, remember, make note that we are subtracting and not adding. Receiving students and 7 is our exercise 1 is on the screen. We have 2 exercises there. Calculate the following, A and B. Okay, that's exercise number 1. Exercise number 1, you can also refer back to your students' workbook, page 27. Exercise 3C and 3D. So those 2 exercises are coming from your students' workbook, exercise 3C and 3D, page 27. So you can also refer to your students' workbook in those pages there, or to that page. Exercise 2. We have 2 exercises there. Write this in columns and then subtract. So exercise A is coming from question 5 or exercise 5A. Okay? Of your students' workbook, page 27. So exercise A, you can also refer to your students' workbook, page 27, exercise 5A. And exercise B is from exercise 3E, exercise 3E of your students' workbook. Okay, we will have, like we did in our previous lesson, we will have 2 boys and 2 girls to present the answers. Let us be equal. Okay, before we have those students to come up and present the answers, I'll try to just go through this correction again here on what on Rhoda's answer here. We will try to correct it, and then you others will try to see where Rhoda made a mistake. So we'll go together. So receiving students and 80s, what's the first thing that Rhoda should do? Borrow from 5. Borrow how many? 1 or 10. We say 10. So borrow 1 from 1, 10 from 5. So which becomes, this 5 becomes what? 4. So this number becomes 10. So 10 minus 6 is 4. Okay. Now 4 cannot subtract 8. So we borrow 1 from 1, 10 from 6. So 6 becomes what? 5. So if we give 1, 10 to 4, what will be our new number? 14. Our new number will be 14. So 14 minus 9? 5. Now can 5 subtract 8? No. So we borrow 1 from 4. So our number becomes 3 here, and not, it becomes, after we give 1 to 5, the number becomes 3. So 110, if we give 110 to 5, what will be our new number here? 15. So 15 minus 8 will be 7. Now what is our number here now? 3 cannot subtract 7, so we borrow 1, 10 from what? This number is no longer 3 because we have already given, borrow 1, 10 from 3. So our number becomes 2. So if we give 1, 10 to 3, what will be our new number? Receiving student 13. Our number becomes 13. Now 13 subtract 7, 6. 2 subtract 0, 2. So our answer is 26.754. So students, please, our borrowing method is very important. If you remember your borrowing method properly, you will come up to the correct answer. Now let's have the first selected students to present the answer on the board. Okay. Here. Here's the marker there. Use this marker. 4.49. 4.49. Minus 1, 3. Okay, receiving students and 70s. Let us look at the answers on the board and compare. Let's look at exercise 1. Our exercise 1 is this answer correct with, is this answer same with the one I have? No. Okay, let's figure out where the mistake is. Okay. Okay. Now, who is wrong here? Receiving students and 70s. Okay, teacher is wrong. So, this answer is correct. Okay? Yes. So, okay, let's go to the next one. Do we have the same answer? Yes. Okay. Working out everything? Same? Yes. Okay, good. Exercise 2, receiving students and 70s, compare your answer here. Do we have the same answers here? Yes. Okay, yes. Exercise B. Did our friend do the borrowing method correctly? Yes. So our final answer is 0.551. Now receiving students and 70s, please, we have our friend's answers on the board. Compare your answers with the answers which are on the board. And if you did not get the following answers correctly, please do your corrections. With that, we will go to our summary for this lesson. Receiving students and 70s, what is our first step when we are subtracting decimals? Okay, let's have Emmanuel. Emmanuel?
Place the decimal in a stack with the larger.
Okay. Place the decimals in the stack with the
larger one.
Okay. That is the first step. In other words, put the decimal point in a straight line and then arrange them in column. Or we arrange the decimal numbers in columns first and then put the decimal numbers, the larger number on top with the decimal points lined up in a straight line. So that is the first step when we are subtracting decimal numbers. Now what is the step 2? Okay, let's have Clement.
Fill in the empty space with 0.
Okay, we fill in the empty space or fill in the spaces with 0 only if necessary. Okay, we don't put zeros unnecessary to fill up the space, but only where necessary to subtract decimal numbers. Step number 3. Okay, let's have Ruti.
Subtract lining up the decimal point in the answer with those in the question.
Okay, good, very good. We subtract the decimal numbers as whole numbers. So when we are subtracting, we subtract as if the values are whole numbers with the numbers given. So step number 3, subtract as if we are subtracting values that are whole number, or if the values were whole numbers. And step number 4, what is the last step? Okay, we place the decimal point in the answer so that it lines up with other decimal point in the straight line. Receiving students and 70s, those are the 4 main steps when we are subtracting decimals. With that, our key phrase for today is, can someone tell me what is our key phrase for today? Okay, let's have our friend there.
Subtraction of decimals.
Okay, subtraction of decimals or subtracting decimals. And our next lesson topic is on multiplication of decimals. With that, receiving students and 70s, thank you very much for your participation.